All right, what is up, guys? Welcome back to another Play and Explain video. Here today, we're going to take on probably what many consider to be the hardest NMPZ map in many ways, which is going to be a varied world by Hogmania. Hogmania has done a great job of compiling, good bait locations, just really cool locations, and just also throwing in a couple of normal locations in there as well. So it's a pretty good distribution in my opinion, and I really do enjoy playing the map. So, yeah, I'm going to be playing this one NMPZ. We're going to try to explain our guesses, play a total of 5 games here. So if you guys are watching this, feel free to play the games before we hop into the play and explain, in which I'll explain all of my guesses, all 25 rounds. And hopefully you guys enjoy the video, and I'll see you guys during the gameplay. All right, what's up, guys? Hopping into a varied world here, NMPZ. Let's get that challenge link for you guys. And we'll start off on game 1 in Brazil. Not too difficult of a round here. We do have, I guess, more of an Ecuadorian style pole here, which is quite interesting, with the shorter steps in between the gaps. But this one does look like a more typical Brazilian pole in a way. Another thing that tells us it's Brazil is we do have this red or orange-ish license plate on this truck, which is going to be found on most commercial vehicles in Brazil. And as I've mentioned, if you guys have seen previous videos, you will get a lot of double yellow lines in Brazil, a lot of dashes, which indicate passing zones, and then you will have some cat eyes. Looks like this one actually came out of the ground, but there is where there would be a cat eye there. All right, pretty big palm plantation here, which is quite interesting. So I guess region guess wise, we're probably not thinking about the southern part of Brazil. It's a little less tropical there, a little bit more temperate. And then you move into the northeast, it gets a little bit drier than this, I would say. Not really the ideal situation for a lot of these palm plantations. I guess the exception would be on the coast here in Sergipe and Alagoas, in which you can get a lot. But I think typically when I see a palm plantation like this, I think a pretty good guess is to go something in Para or something like that. You could also consider Maranhão here. Maranhão, in most cases, probably wouldn't have support, so these beams going to the top bar here wouldn't be too common in Maranhão. You will mostly get no support poles there. So that's kind of why I've decided to move off, and I guess I'm going Belém. The reason I'm not going something like Macapa here, which is also a possibility, is because when you're driving and you're looking forward at the car, you will normally see a big blur on the right side, on the passenger side front of the car, which I don't see in this location. So I guess the best guess for me would be to go Belém, although I'm not entirely certain. What's our copyright here? It is 2020. So yeah, I'm just going to try downtown Belém here and hope for the best. And yeah, it was pretty close to Belém. Kind of worked that out because normally Maranhão is the standard guess there with that palm plantation, but with the supports on the pole, made it much less likely that it would be there. So we switched over to Para and we got it right. All right, very red soil here on this location. A bunch of red tiled roofs. But the main thing telling me the country here is these 3 insulators on the top of this square pole. So you can kind of see it. This one doesn't have the insulators at the top. This one actually does have the crossbar with the insulators, but you can tell this is kind of a square pole similar to the one that you would get in Thailand. And you can typically see dots running up the side, although it's very hard to see from this distance on this one. But the insulators on the top like that, where it's just sitting on the top of the crossbar, very good indication for Sri Lanka in this case. Pole's pretty unique to Sri Lanka. I think maybe Ghana has a similar pole, but I mean, in Ghana, you can use a million other things to get Ghana, and not just the pole. Yeah, laundry being hung out to dry. We can see, clothes that look somewhat Tamil in terms of, like, I guess Tamil's the language, but in that Tamil-speaking region, typical clothes for that. And also, these red tiled roofs are quite common in the south part of India and also in Sri Lanka, which would make sense. Yeah, a lot of coconut palms here. Red soil. Region guessing Sri Lanka. I don't think anyone's really that good at. So I mean, it doesn't look super dry, so I would stray away from the north. So I'm probably just going to click around capital here and hope for the best. And it was north of capital there, which is fair enough. We'll take the 2 streak though. And we'll move on to what appears to be Bhutan. Bhutan, more so than not, is going to have a very wide shoulder and a thinner road here to obviously prevent people from driving off, because it is an extremely mountainous country. And then when you get roads that kind of go up to the side of the cliff, you will get a bunch of like cinder blocks lining the road as well. You also see a lot of these pines, which are quite common in that Himalayas area. If you look in like Sikkim or Uttarakhand, you will get like similar pines there, and it does make sense as Bhutan is also in that Himalayan region here. These types of like pines with branches that extend out horizontally, and then you have like the little pine needles growing on each of those individual branches, essentially like you're seeing here. And yeah, we can see just absolutely huge mountains. The reason why it's not a different mountainous country like Colombia or something like that is simply just because, you know, it's a very different climate. Like, this is quite high altitude, just like Colombia, but you won't get these kind of pines. You'll get a bit more of a tropical version of plants in Colombia. And yeah, thin road, also a good meta. And a lot of the Bhutan coverage is going to be overcast. So in terms of region guessing here, the east near Trashigang and around here typically tends to be a bit more sunny. So you won't see as many clouds. So usually when you see clouds like this, straying middle or west should do the trick. And yeah, we'll probably just leave it in between there. And yeah, it was all the way west there. We do get the country, and we'll move on to our next round here, in which we appear to have what looks like the United States or Canada. Could be Canada, of course. But yeah, we can see the backlight on this car, but we can also see the plates on most of these cars in the parking lot, and the car behind us are going to be those square plates, which should indicate most likely Americas over places in Europe. Another thing that tells us Americas here are these wooden style poles. A lot of places in Europe, they will be concrete or metal. So yeah, another good indication there. Sun in the south here, so we can rule out South America. So I would probably say somewhere in North America, either US or Canada. I think I lean more US here. Looks like we're on some kind of harbor, right? We can see decently sized boats here to the west. And I'm having trouble placing this realistically. This one's a bit tough. We have all white plate. We have all front plates, which maybe we're on one of the Great Lakes here. Because if we were south, in a lot of the places where, you know, you have access to water and big marinas like this, a lot of them won't have front plates. And I think with the water being west, it is a little bit odd for it to be, I guess, there are places on the East Coast that could work. Specifically, I'm trying to get a good feel for that architecture. It's kind of interesting, honestly. This is not the easiest round for region guessing. And I really don't think I'm going to be that close here. Michigan wouldn't have fronts. It's a no front state. So then where do you go? Do you go somewhere along Lake Erie then? Like somewhere near Buffalo? I could maybe see... We don't really have a good look at the flora as well, because it is a bit far away. Could see something like Delaware maybe. Let's just try the Buffalo guess. It was just Canada, but we get a good region guess down at the very least. Little unfortunate that it does end up being Canada. Kind of an interesting angle. I guess the reason why I kind of ruled out like most parts of Canada is I feel like with water being to the west, it is a bit weird for obviously this part here of Ontario. This part makes sense, but I don't know. I don't know. It didn't feel like here, I guess. But it ends up being Port Colborne there, which, you know, makes sense with the front plates here just being a big dock. But yeah, we do get a pretty good guess down, even though we don't get the country. So we'll take it. We're on for a decent score, and we get Japan here. Low cam. I mean, this is one of the easiest countries to recognize. But in terms of region guessing this, it's very hard. Because a lot of architecture looks the same in this country. And yeah, without a pole top or some pole plates, it does get very, very tough to guess. I mean, I guess going off of the landscape that we have in the background, it doesn't seem too south. Like, we have a pretty big abundance of pine trees. I think I'm just going to click like Hakusan National Park or something and hedge for a bit more north, just with the abundance of pine trees. And yeah, it was just Shikoku there. Fair enough. I mean, a little bit of a tough one, but we get 23,000. It's a pretty good score overall. Let me know if you guys beat me in this first game. Yeah, let's hop into game 2 here. Let's hop into game 2. And let me get that link, and then we can hop into another one here, in which we have Curacao, I think. So we do have like the boxy end to the car blur, which does indicate that we do have some sort of car meta, whether that be like the Guatemala roof rack car, the Dominican Republic roof rack car, the Curacao, you know, front with the black car. Okay, where am I zooming? And Curacao and all 3 of the ABC islands, which are these 3, all pretty much like you will get a big abundance of cacti there. Obviously Aruba and Bonaire are not covered, but Curacao is, and you will get the same climate in all 3. I mean, with it being very close to this part of Colombia and like the coastal parts of Venezuela, it is very, very dry, similar to the climate that you'll get on this northern tip here near Arabia. So I think Curacao makes the most sense. And it's probably just going to be one of these yellow roads with nothing around us. And yeah, I think we are dropping it in Curacao here. Sun is quite ambiguous. It does make sense. We are very close to the equator here, being on Curacao. It is a bit more south, although I wouldn't necessarily use it in this case. But yeah, the big thing we're going off here is the car blur. So let's send it in here. And yeah, it was a bit further, probably 5K-able there, but totally fine. We do get the country. And we move on to a European round, it looks like. Tiled roofs. The architecture definitely doesn't feel very American, even though we do have wood poles here. I definitely think Europe makes sense. It is Gen 3, which is interesting. And we're looking at a pretty big city here. My initial thought with the Gen 3 was Skopje. And I think that makes some sense, right? We do have a mountain here in the front, which is this mountain that we're looking at, and then a bigger mountain in the back here, which is this mountain. Wood poles would typically push you towards North Macedonia or Greece anyway. But the architecture, especially like this exposed brick stuff, doesn't really feel too Greek to me. Definitely feels like more North Macedonia, Bulgaria, Serbia, Croatia, Montenegro, all of those countries, as opposed to Greece. And I feel like I'm struggling to think of a quite big city in Greece that's going to have mountains south like this. That's this big. I mean, Patras is, I don't know, possible, I guess. Larissa's kind of in the middle of the valley there. Thessaloniki doesn't really work with the water south. Yeah, Kavala, we have the water south again. Athens, you know, we do have mountains, but I mean, this seems like a smaller city than Athens. So I think I've landed on Skopje here. I think it makes sense with this Balkan architecture. It's also Gen 3, which is good, which helps our argument because NMK only has Gen 3. And yeah, we have a couple of minarets here, which would indicate that they're probably a practicing Muslim country, which does check out for NMK, I do believe. So I think with all of those things, the wood poles, these tiled roofs, I feel like in Bulgaria, you would typically get like concrete poles. So I think the wood poles fit a bit more for NMK as well. So yeah, I think I'm going to send in a Skopje here. Oh, it is actually. Hello? It is actually Bitola there, which, you know, makes sense. Maybe we were looking at a bit smaller city, but we do get the country right, which I will take, and we'll move on to round 3. Yeah, this is one where I am not sure how much info and help I can give you guys, because I'm not too sure myself. This football pitch doesn't feel very American, but the pole back there looks like it could be wooden. Potentially. Huh. Sun is south-ish. This wall here also doesn't feel very American, so I think I'm just going to ignore the pole. Can I ignore the pole, though? I mean, the football pitch doesn't feel very American either, with the park. And neither does the road. So, we have some pines here. It feels like not like Western Europe to me, I guess. I feel like the pitch would be a bit better quality. The fences feel a bit weird, so I'm thinking like Croatia, Bulgaria, Romania, maybe. And I guess with this rock wall here, I'm leaning Croatia, although in Gen 3 the season is kind of wrong, which is what scares me, because it should be like an autumn season. We should see some yellow leaves here, but we don't. I also considered, like, it feels like Mediterranean in a way with these walls, so I'm also considering like Spain, like Mallorca or something, but the flower pots here and whatever architecture is behind there doesn't feel too Spanish, I guess. This is a tough one. It's not an easy one. I think we're just going to get it over with and go Croatia. It ends up being Trieste there, which makes sense. I'm glad that we got that general region, like, on the Adriatic Sea. But I do think Italy here is kind of a tough get. Let's take a look at this pole. Oh, it's just a weird metal pole. I have never seen this kind of pole before. Especially with this at the bottom. I mean, yeah, if you see this house, you can maybe deduce some part of Italy there. But yeah, we kind of did get that Adriatic Sea vibe, so Trieste does make sense at the end of the day. You know what? We'll take it. We'll move on to round 4, in which we get another low cam round. Yeah, not going to spend too much time on this one. I mean, it should be Japan. We will just click Awaji Island. And it was Aomori. Sure. All right, let's move on to another Japan, in which I won't take a bit more time. But trees do feel a bit more south. I'm seeing a pretty significant lack of pines here. I think we're seeing a bit more tropical or southern looking plants. So I think I'm clicking Kyushu here. No, it's just Mie Coastal, which makes sense. But we do get over 20,000 once again. So game 2, not the worst. Could have been better, but it's not the worst. All right, let's hop into game 3 here. Let's hop into game 3. And we start off in Europe. We do have 2023 copyright here. It doesn't look like we have car visible to me. At least we might be looking at the back of the car. I'm really not sure if we're looking at the front or the back, but that kind of fits my assumption that the architecture definitely feels a little bit Alpine in a way, especially this white style house. But we do have some exposed brick as well on the corners of this house. So I'm thinking with the mixture of that, I think Slovenia feels the best. Thin road fits, but mainly this architecture here. It doesn't exactly feel Austrian, but it feels like Alpine inspired in a way. And it doesn't look like we're too high up altitude wise, like most parts of Austria. So I am thinking Slovenia here makes the most sense. No car in Europe, very common in Slovenia, Austria, and Belgium. I mean, can be found in a bunch of other places, but you should more so use it as like more of a confirmation than strictly using the no car to guess one of these 3 countries just because there's no car. But you have to have an idea that you're in Belgium, Austria, or Slovenia in order to do that, I'd say. Yeah, I guess could be Croatia as well. That's also a possibility, but I'm kind of going off of the assumption that we have no car here, so I think Slovenia makes sense. It does make sense that it's all the way in the pocket, which is why it was quite flat. But yeah, architecture certainly checks out, and, you know, we'll take the country guess. And we move into a Europe once again, it looks like. Buildings are a bit odd, but the cobblestone, like, stone pavement here definitely feels Western Europe to me. I feel like you'd be hard-pressed to find this in Baltics and Poland. And this fence here also feels a bit more Western Europe. Especially with, like, the set set posts and the green wiring. Copyright here would be useful, I guess, because if it's not 2023, then I can rule out Germany, but I don't really see one. There's one here, but I can't tell what it is, which is tough. I don't know. I think probably the most standard thing to do here is probably to guess the Netherlands. Not really seeing a poll as well, which would fit my bias for the Netherlands, just because, you know, Netherlands doesn't really have electricity poles in sight. I encourage you guys to look around the Netherlands and see if you can find a location with, like, utility poles like you will see in, like, all of the other European countries. You just don't get it. Could be Western Germany as well. Also a possibility. But yeah, it's kind of a crapshoot in which you want to go here. I guess brick architecture kind of makes me push towards the Netherlands, Belgium, or Germany, because this kind of, like, brick style architecture is very common there. So I think the Netherlands, I like it as a shout. And it was Belgium. Fair enough. Also a possibility, certainly. Did we have no car? And here's the Belgian no car, as I mentioned. Yeah, just nothing visible on the car. But Belgium certainly makes a lot of sense. Couldn't see that van up there to see if we had a yellow plate or a white plate. Obviously the white plate means we're in Belgium, but nonetheless, we will take it. All right, we move into another round here. Which, is this Belgium again, or is this going to be France? This is a bit of a tough one here. We do have this pole, which, like, is a bit thicker at the bottom, a bit thinner at the top, but it does have, like, some indents here. It doesn't seem like it's the French, like, French pole. Exists in France, but it is more common in Belgium, with, like, longer spaces in between the steps. Whereas in France or Spain, you will get, like, the Ecuadorian style ladder pole, essentially. And then this chevron, like, I would expect this to probably be, like, blue and white in France most of the time. And I know Belgium will have this color on their chevron. So I think Belgium seems more likely to me, because I'm going off of this chevron and the pole being more likely to be in Belgium. Region guess wise, I mean, we're on a pretty large river, so I guess we could look for that. Could we just be somewhere on this river here? Seems like a pretty big one. Architecture definitely feels like it could be French in a way, though. So maybe I'm thinking, like, something here. I mean, we're, like, curving, and the river's to our south. Well, the river's to our northwest. I don't know. I don't hate trying something along this river, because, like, we do have the French style, like, shutters here. So I'm gonna try it. And it is just France. I mean, yeah. I don't know. This probably exists in France as well. But yeah, the pole, oh, I guess it is. There's a lot of dots going up. It's just missing the steps in between, which is quite interesting. And it ends up being Bordeaux. Which, I mean, I think Bordeaux makes sense. I mean, the shutters definitely felt very French. Yeah, tough. All right, let's move on into a What is this? Oman? Hmm. We have a striped black and white pole. Not an easy round. I mean, I told you guys this map is going to be extremely difficult. How is this Oman, though? Is it small cam? My first one was Greece, right? But the striped pole there, I don't know if I've ever seen a black and white striped pole in Greece. Is the issue. And I don't think Peru this works with the angle of the water. And it does seem like we have some kind of car blur here at the bottom, which would indicate that we have some sort of car meta here. I mean, where in Oman even works? Like, do you just have random, like a random road right near the cliffside like this? I guess it exists, but I mean, I don't feel great about this guess because I'm pretty sure the mountains don't get this forested here. So do I just go Greece? So I don't think we're up here either. I don't know. This round, we'll just try them on. This fence doesn't really feel Greek to me. Like, with just these wooden sticks. I don't know. Why am I between Greece and Oman? I mean, I'm gonna go off to the fact that we do appear to have a car meta blur here. I mean, it could just be small cam Greece, but I don't know. Yeah, it is just Oman, but over here, I've never seen this road before. Huh. All right. Well, can't be too mad at it, I guess. We'll take it. And we move on to... what is this then? All right, every round is just a thinker on this map, I feel like. I mean, it's certainly Latin America, I would say. Like, the hexagonal pavement is quite common in Ecuador especially, but it's not Ecuador given that it's Gen 4 and we do have, like, a car showing. It's not the pickup truck coverage in Gen 4 that you will get in Ecuador. Coast is north here. I mean, we kind of have what I would think to be maybe a Colombian cross there, and the plate doesn't seem too long. Although I can't tell if that's yellow or not. It could be yellow, honestly. It could be yellow. And that would check out for the car where we can see the rear bumper light like that. Moscow. What does that mean? I mean, we're only driving on the left because there's water on the right side of the road, right? I would assume. I mean, this sign here is queued up for right-hand drive. So I think it makes sense to go something like Colombia, right? I'm just struggling to think where in Colombia this would be. Could be on a river, I guess. I don't know. I guess I'm going to try on the coast somewhere. Ah, it's Tumaco. I did consider, like, those two cities. Fair enough. Just someone on holiday, I guess. Yeah, I did consider these two cities. Especially with this pavement, I feel like is somewhat common in this area. So, like, Tumaco or Buenaventura did make sense, but I guess this makes a lot of sense with Coast North. Like, I should just be maybe 5King this. Bit of a tough one, but we do get the country streak, which I will take. And yeah, we've got a couple more here, and we're almost 30 minutes into the video, so let's try to speed it up here and see how this goes. All right, Mexico here. We have a short plate. It looks like sun is also pretty south with the shadows casting to to the north, although, you know, maybe it is just right above us at this point in time. But Mexico here with the short plate, and this kind of dry, arid, deserty landscape. We do have a concrete pole here, which appears to be hexagonal, and just a ton of red brick. So region guess-wise, red brick, very common in this Guanajuato, Jalisco, Michoacan area, especially with this dry landscape like this. So like typically if you just hedge around Lago de Chapala here, should be good. So yeah, we'll try that. And it was a bit more east, but yeah, right in Guanajuato there. But yeah, it's a good hedge. Definitely pays off. Japan here, once again, don't really have much to talk about because, once again, we do not have a distinguishable pole top or pole plate, but we are on low cam here. Yeah. Alright, just ends up being northeast of Nagoya there, but we'll move on. Into a much more difficult round. We do have some prickly pear cactus here. Sun appears to be south, as we can see. It's kind of creeping in with the sun rays on the top left part of the screen, with the shadows casting to the north. Kind of an interesting dry landscape. We do have a black water tank here. So I'm just pointing out all the things that I see. Immediately, I am thinking Latin America here, I think, especially with the use of cactus here. Hard to think of where else we would get this kind of dry, arid landscape with cactus, with these stick fences. These stick fences also feel very Latin American here. And with sun south, I think Mexico definitely makes a lot of sense, especially with all of this prickly pear. And I think generally, prickly pear like this can, you know, usually good hedging around Zacatecas or San Luis Potosi region guess-wise. So I think that's probably what I'm going to do. It is quite rocky and quite dry. So yeah, let's try that. And it is a pretty good hedge there. Very nice. And that one pays off. And we move into a European round, it looks like, with a round pole here. What is our copyright on this one? Would be pretty helpful. I guess I'm not seeing one. Yeah, I just don't see one, unfortunately. 2023, it's on the right side of the screen here. All right, interesting poll here. Why am I confused by this round? I guess these polls are also really weird. These leaders, I would expect it to be like found in like Poland. But I don't think this is Poland, considering we have a round poll. I would probably expect it to be a ladder poll if it was Poland. So with all of those things considered, am I just going like Czechia here? I think. Let me explain why Czechia. So Czechoslovakia is going to have this rounded pole here, a little bit thicker at the top, the bottom, a little bit thinner at the top. Definitely feels more like Central to Western European architecture, with like these slanted red roofs like this. We also have some gray roofs here, and a very thin road. I think the main thing I'm using is the pole here, and kind of just the feel of the architecture. I guess it could be Poland, right? But I think Czechia is a bit more likely because we do have like some decent rolling hill size. And yeah, like I said, I would expect this to be a ladder pole in Poland. Never really seen these kind of like A-frame poles like this, like especially not to this size. But I think Czechia is the best guess. Could be Slovakia as well. That's also a possibility. So with that, I'm probably just going to hedge the border. So I did consider this because I thought that this house especially looked French. I didn't say it though. It's not a rounded pole. All right, well, that would have made my life a lot easier. But we do have that, you know, that ladder pole here. That is quite common in both France and Spain and Belgium, of course. But yeah, quite the blunder there for me. We also had this pole top, which like is quite common in Czechia and Slovakia as well as France and Spain. So yeah, a bit of a tough one. I mean, this house looks very French, especially with the brick usage here. You really wouldn't get brick usage like this much in Czechia, I'd say. So yeah, a bit of a tough one, but we'll move on. into what looks like Turkey here, right? So reason I know it's Turkey is Turkey uses a lot of these reflectors with the diagonal red and white stripes lining sides of the road. All white lines, of course. And you will get a lot of these square houses, especially in the southern part of Turkey. Kind of looks like very similar to houses that you would get in a lot of places in the Middle East. And yeah, this looks like the near Syria area, region guess-wise, because we do have some cotton being grown here. Cotton quite commonly grown in this area near the Syrian border. And then I think in combination with like these squarey box houses, I think it does make a lot of sense to be somewhere down here, and the flatness, of course, as well. Gaziantep, you will get some pretty intermittent hills around the city, so I think something like Şanlıurfa or something like that will work, just because it is quite flat. Like, we don't see any ridges. There's only a few places in Turkey that's going to be this flat, where you can see basically nothing in most directions, which is going to be like this area here near the Syrian border, and then this area around Konya. A lot of it will be at least somewhat hilly in some ways. There's obviously going to be exceptions to the rule, but generally when you see an extremely flat round like this, you either click around Konya or around like Şanlıurfa and Mardin. And as you can see, it makes a lot of sense. So yeah, we'll just click somewhere here, I guess. And it was very close to the Syrian border there. And we will take the 21,456, and let's hop into our last game here. Let's grab that link. And let's do it. Here we go. All right, we start off in what appears to be Russia, right? I think. So we do have that alternating hook pull that you will get in Latvia sometimes. But this architecture feels very traditional Russian with the wood usage. And I think the cinder blocks at the bottom of the pole, a bit more common in Russia than it is in many of the Baltic states. I'm looking for a copyright just to confirm, because if it is 21, then it can't be Baltics, because Baltics didn't get Gen 4 until 2022 copyright. I don't see one, unfortunately, which is kind of tough. But I think I am assuming Russia regardless. This does look like a Russian, like, street sign, maybe, with the Cyrillic, although I might be imagining. And as for where, I mean, this is a bit of a tough one here. With the wood usage, maybe a bit more north here. I think you will get a bit more wood usage as you go more north. Like, I want to go somewhere up here, but I'm not sure if the climate or the trees fit. I guess it could be, but that is a pretty dense looking forest there. We'll try it. Okay, it was even more north there, near Pinega, but we'll take it. Was it a Russian street sign as I expected? Yeah, it was. Yeah, you will see a lot of these Russian street signs, white border with like blue background with white Cyrillic text there. So that kind of helped. And it is 2021 copyright, so very helpful if you can spot the copyright on that one. You know it's not Baltics immediately, because, you know, Baltics will only have 2022 copyright and on. So yeah, we'll take that guess. We'll move on to our next round here, in which we have a round pole here. Very Latin American looking architectures, high gates, but a very, very dry climate, no mountains. Immediately I'm thinking Colombia here. Sun is kind of ambiguous. Looks like it's somewhat to our southwest here, with the shadow on this pole casting northeast slightly. We do have a taxi here with this yellow car, but it appears to be a white plate, which would make sense because taxi cab plates in Colombia are going to be white. All other cars are going to be yellow plates. And I have seen these curbs, like these white and red curbs, very commonly in northern Colombia as well, which would make sense with the flatness, makes sense with like this palm tree here, somewhat very tropical, but also very hot because it is quite near the equator. So I think something like Barranquilla or Santa Marta or Monteria would work. Let's just scan a grid line here. I think the grid looks okay. for some of these places. Although we have to be, like, not in the big city here. Yeah, let's just try this. The reason why I'm ruling out Brazil, of course, we do have a bunch of rounded poles here. I would expect to see at least one ladder pole in Brazil. And Mexico doesn't really work because I would expect this to be a hexagonal pole in Mexico in most cases. And a lot of places in Colombia, typically you'll get these porches like this, which is just going to be like different colored tiles, essentially. You can kind of see it here with the grout marks in between as well. But yeah, pretty big patios, pretty high security as well with these high gates, which does make sense for the northern part of Colombia. Yeah, it does end up being Barranquilla here. Fair enough. All right, we'll move on to round 3. This one immediately strikes me as Washington, Oregon area. It takes a little bit of time to recognize it, I'd say, just because it's hard to distinguish from like stuff in Wyoming, Utah, Colorado, but it kind of has a different feel to it. You will get these very, very dry hills with a lot of the coverage is in summer, so you will get these very, very dry hills with just not green grass, essentially, and just rolling hills. And in Oregon, Washington, especially in eastern Oregon and Washington, very, very dark black pavement here, which is quite common. I would expect to see some wide lines in most parts of Oregon, I'd say. So I guess eastern Washington probably works the best. As you can see, topography wise, there is a ton of rolling hills, especially on the eastern part of Washington. So I think it works. It was just Oregon. Okay, fair enough. Yeah, makes a lot of sense. Around the Snake River area, yeah, you will just get a ton of rolling hills. And this last round here, the car in front of us, oh, not the last round, penultimate round. This car definitely looks like it's driving left. And with this wood pole here driving left, I think either Ireland or UK makes sense with the flora that we have going on here. We have some pine tree mixtures, some northern looking trees as well, and we have a pretty thin road, which would all check out for the British Isles. I think I lean more Ireland here, strictly based off of vibes. Yeah, I just can't see myself going UK here because I don't know where in the UK I would guess. So I can see where in Ireland I would guess, and that would just be middle, and it's Northern Ireland, which is tough. All right, let's go on to our last round here, in which we do have an Italian style bollard here, in which the black is at the top of the white cap bollard. Could it be Albania, actually? I think this is supposed to be bait, because you're supposed to be in a 50-50 between Italy and Albania, because they have the same bollard. But the houses look more Italian to me, I'd say. Yeah, especially this yellow one in the back, I think makes a lot of sense for Italy. And in Albania, I would expect to see water tanks here. I mean, the main thing I'm using to get Albania is this bollard. Region guess wise, we have like a vineyard growing in this house. I don't know, like you just go Tuscany, I guess. It makes sense to me, at least. It is Albania. I guess this brick house would be quite abnormal for Italy, to be fair. Because like I mentioned in that NMK round, they do use a lot of brick. And it does make sense that it's Gen 3. Yeah. I don't know. Kind of trolled there. And on that one. Not the way to end off the video I would have liked, but it's fine. We do get over 20,000, I think, on all 5 seeds, which is good. But yeah, let me know how you guys did in the comments. Let me know if you guys enjoyed. Of course, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. And of course, I will see you guys tomorrow for another GeoGuessr video. Peace.